I am not a Swiftie. Yeah, so today we start with a little Dionne Warwick. That's what friends are for. And my best friend and I travel. We were both so grateful that God put us together because one, we both love to travel and we didn't have anybody to travel with. She's married and her husband does not like to travel. Like every time we go on a trip, she's like, Derek would hate this. So she's like, I'm so glad to have you as a friend because Derek would hate this. We watch shows together, we hang out every week, and that's what friends are for. Like, we're just there for each other. And as we're coming back from our trip, we're flying over the ocean, and we've watched a couple shows where terrible things happen on a plane flight. We loved Lost. If any of you guys have ever seen Lost, their plane crashes on a deserted island, and then the time travels, and it's crazy. And then we also have been watching Manifest, where the plane somewhere between Jamaica and home, we almost went to Jamaica, somewhere between Jamaica and New York, like disappears for 5 years and then just reappears. We have a thing with time travel and plane flights, I guess. So we were talking about which show would you rather have to live out, Lost or Manifest? And then we were discussing the merits of that. And so then we're flying over, I can see this little strip but below Florida of what looked to me like deserted little island. They look tiny. Deserted little islands, and I said, oh, there's no one on them. And so I was like, man, would that be like to crash and be on a deserted island? And that gets me thinking about Castaway. How many of you guys saw Castaway when that came out with Tom Hanks? Right? So we used to watch Lost and Manifest. I've also watched Castaway with Tom Hanks. And in this movie, Tom Hanks works for like FedEx or something. And he's flying, and the plane crashes. And I believe he's the only survivor. He ends up being the only one. I think even from the beginning, he's the only survivor. And so for years, he lives on this island by himself. And at one point, a volleyball washes on shore. And he's so lonely, his hand is bloody. He touches the volleyball, and it makes this. So he makes a little face on it. He calls it Wilson because it's a Wilson volleyball. And Wilson is his best friend. While he's on the island, Wilson is his best friend. And it shows him carrying Wilson wherever he goes. And it shows him like talking and having conversations with Wilson. He's sitting at dinner and he's Wilson or having a conversation. And you've watched the show and you're like, it's just a ball, right? But there's a scene at some point, finally after years, Hanks is like, okay, I'm not getting rescued. I can't live here anymore. So he builds a raft and he sails out and he's got his best friend Wilson. And this package, the one package survived the trip. He's got the one package and his buddy Wilson. Well, as his raft is kind of falling apart and he's trying to pull the raft together, he gets the raft back together and looks and Wilson has fallen overboard. And there's this scene, and it's a longer scene, I just put a snippet in there, where he sees Wilson floating away. And he tries to start swimming towards Wilson, but then he's afraid his raft will get too far away. So then he goes back to the raft and he unravels some of the rope, and he's trying to swim and pull the raft to get to Wilson. And he goes underwater and he drops the rope and he goes back and gets the rope, and it's this whole struggle, and he realizes he has a choice. He can get Wilson and lose the raft, or he can get the raft and lose Wilson. And there's this heart-wrenching scene here I'll show you guys. It seems strange that a man would be so distraught over losing by this time the volleyball's all frayed and stuff. But the volleyball has been his only friend for years. And so even though it's just an object, for him, it was like losing a best friend. It was like Kate Winslet letting go of Jack on Titanic, right? Tom Hanks was feeling like Winslet did letting go of Jack on the Titanic. She was letting go of his best friend, knowing he'd never see it again. But he had to do it. And you think, like, why does he do that? And the reason is we are not made to be alone. We were not designed to be by ourselves. We weren't. And I know this because the Bible tells me so. You guys remember that song? For the Bible tells me so, right? So in the beginning, there was nothing, and God spoke, and God made the earth and the light and the sea and the clouds and the stars, and he made plants, and he made animals, and he made human. He made Adam, and he had a celebration. And he rested and is like, huzzah, look at this. I made something awesome. But he realized that it is not good for the human to be alone. As much as I love my dog, and I'm sure Roxanne loves her cats, they're not your cat that you used to have. Didn't you used to have a cat? Yeah. As much as we love you're the only person I know who has a cat here. I had a cat. It's not sufficient. Pets are great, but they're not the same as a human friend. And so God saw that. He's like, it's not enough. So the Lord God said in Genesis 2, it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper suitable for him. And this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is unselfishly attached to his wife, and they become one. God said it's not good to be alone. And so I'm going to make sure you have a friend, a partner, someone to get through this life with. Because we're not supposed to get through life by ourselves. And even science has realized that loneliness is bad for us. The CDC on the CDC's website, they have a thing on loneliness and the ill effects of loneliness on people. And they've done multiple studies on the effects of being alone. And it says being lonely increases your risk of premature death. Being lonely is a 50% increase for dementia. Being lonely is a 30% increase for heart disease and stroke. Being lonely, you have an increased rate for depression, anxiety, suicide, and heart patients who are lonely, who feel all alone in this world, are 4 times more likely to die. They're like 60% more likely to be hospitalized. And it's not just about having a spouse. Like, I think about if I don't get married, and once my parents are gone, I still have Jill. Like, I still have my friends. I have Jody. Like, I have friends who fill that gap for me that I don't have as right now by not having a spouse. So this isn't about being married. It's about just being attached to people, right? We are supposed to have relationships, meaningful relationships in our lives. In Ecclesiastes is one of the books in the Bible called the wisdom books. It's where God spits out his word sound bites of wisdom. And here's a verse from Ecclesiastes. He says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return on their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them. Also, if we lie down together, they can keep warm. How can you keep warm all alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord, 3 strands, is not quickly broken. You guys have heard that phrase, the whole is worth more than the sum of its parts? When we're part of a unit, we're stronger. When we're part of a unit, when we have friends, when we have family, when we're part of a unit, we have people watching over us. This one of the main reasons, the main reason I came here versus from when I was at Crossroads is because when I came here the second time, people knew my name. And I was like, and if I didn't show up, someone texted me, you okay? Everything okay with you? That's the beauty of church. That's the beauty of our family, our faith family, is we watch out. Roxanne went and visited the Leslies. Rob has done that too. We are people who check up on each other, who watch out for each other, who keep track of each other. That's the beauty of a family-sized church like ours. Because we do God's work by being in relationship with each other. Friendships and relationships are important. They're important both for fun, but they're also important for our survival. They're important for our strength. And I know I don't have to convince you guys of this. I'm sure that in your mind you're like, yeah, Stephanie, I know that. So what? So what do we do about it? Now that we know and believe that, and we did, what do we have to do about it? How are we going to act on that? And the thing is, we've got to be more intentional. We've become a society that seems to be okay. We show up and we go away and no one talks to anybody anymore. Social media and TV have made it really easy to be isolated in our homes. Church used to be the center. From what been told, and Paul and Dale can tell us, there used to be softball games and go to birthday parties and anniversary parties, and like church was almost like another part of your family. And through a series of actions that were not anyone's fault in here, we've kind of scattered, and we don't really have that anymore. We show up on Sunday, we catch up, chit-chat, and then we go our separate ways. See you next Sunday. But that's not what church is meant to be. I love this. I've been seeing this on Facebook lately. Church is not something to go to. It's a family you belong to. But I don't know that, are we behaving like we're a family we belong to? In some ways we are. But, I tell the kids, if you want to have a friend, you got to make a friend. Like some kids are like, no one wants to be my friend. That's like me saying, I'm never going to get married, and I just sit in my house. If I just sit in my house, my spouse is not going to come like knocking on my door. I guess if God really wanted him to, God can work miracles. But we've got to get out there and make friends. I want you to look around this room and think about, do you touch base with any of these people outside of Sunday morning from 10:15 to 11:15? And if the answer to that question is no, not really, then maybe we need to make a friend. One, so that we're stronger together, so we protect each other. Bill and Georgia and Rox are friends outside of this building. I'm sure Roxanne talks to them outside of Sunday mornings. And that's why she goes to visit them and check up on them, because they're friends. But over time, some of our friends have left, they've passed on, and it's time for us to rally the troops, to look around this room, and to make some friendships again. And so if you want to grow spiritually, and if you want this building, this church, this organization to grow, that growth happens when we are intentional about making friendships. So today, before you leave, think about next Sunday, whatever. If you're already Facebook friends with somebody, I want you to reach out to somebody who's part of this family and start to strengthen some of those relationships. Get coffee, go for a walk, even just call and chit-chat, have dinner. And I'm not saying you have to do it every week, but we've got to become better. We've got to show society what it's like to make friends again, because I feel like society's kind of lost, especially the younger crowd. I feel like they have forgotten. They don't know what it really is to make a good friend, because they sit behind their phones and think they have friends because they have people they play video games with and they've got 1,000 friends on Facebook or whatever. But true friendship is sad when they go, like Tom Hanks was when Wilson floated away. True friendship sticks together when it's tough. True friendship goes and visits you when you can't come to church. True friendship checks up on you. True friendship says, I didn't see you this week when I'm supposed to see you. Is everything okay? That's what we need to be. And that's what, from a godly perspective, that's what God intended for us. And from a church family perspective, if we want to be strong and to grow, we need to be better about being intentional about making friendships within our family. And all of God's people said,